The 2024 Miami Grand Prix has just wrapped up, and I could not wait to talk about it because it feels like the impossible has just happened. Lando Norris has won his first ever Formula 1 Grand Prix. Sure, did it take him 110 races to do so? Yes, but it is finally done and accomplished, over with. Lando no wins is not a thing anymore. You know, he finally has his first win of his Formula 1 career, and it may not even be his last this season. We are only 6 races into this 2024 campaign with almost 18 plus more to go. There's potential here that Lando Norris could walk away with not only one, but several more Formula 1 Grand Prix wins this season, especially if he continues to perform the way he did in Miami. Because not only was he, lucky with some circumstances, but his racing in general was just out of this world. Lando Norris really was the fastest racer out there. Sure, did Max Verstappen have a few car troubles? Maybe. I mean, he did complain on the radio several times about some issues here and there that he was dealing with. But again, Lando Norris didn't need much help to win this. Did a safety car towards the end of the race help, establish this gap and give him a quicker pit stop than Max Verstappen was given? Yes, but honestly, with the way that Lando Norris was catching up to Verstappen anyway, it didn't matter. I mean, he had already held first place when the safety car came in, and yes, it had helped him. I will give him that. But the way that both McLarens competed in this race, it felt like they were the best cars on the track. Unfortunately for Oscar Piastri, his story didn't end as well because, towards the end of the race, him and Carlos Sainz really went at each other, but I'll dive more into that in a sec. Right now, I just wanted to remind you guys to like the video, slow down, subscribe to the channel because it really helps the channel. We're trying to reach 3,000. I feel like we can get there, and every subscription goes a long way. Much appreciated. All right, now let's get right back to it. Like I was mentioning, there was only a handful of laps to go at this point. Carlos Sainz and Oscar Piastri are competing for that 4th spot right behind, Lando Norris, Verstappen, and Leclerc. So, with them competing, going head-to-head, Carlos Sainz feels like Oscar Piastri made a legal move. He feels like he should be given the 4th spot, and that's kind of where the tension builds. Because now Carlos Sainz is pissed at Oscar Piastri, and for the next 3, 4, 5 laps, he is trying his damn best to get that 4th place back from him. And, it leads to a bit of aggressive driving. And that's exactly what happens. Carlos Sainz gets that spot back, and then there's a little bit of an incident, some contact between the two cars. It affects Oscar Piastri's car a lot more than it does, I want to say Carlos Sainz. And we saw the effects it had on Oscar Piastri almost immediately, because in the next few turns, both Sergio Perez and Lewis Hamilton were able to pass Piastri, and then he kind of just fell further and further back, needed to make an extra pit stop that really put him towards the end of the pack, and then there was only like 6 or 7 laps for Piastri, and he was able to go from somewhere in the 18th, 19th range all the way to 13th place, which is where he ended up finishing. So it was unfortunate for Piastri how his race ended, especially after that fantastic start he got off to. I mean, he jumped from 5th or 6th place into 3rd place, I want to say, with the way that things kind of shaped up around turn 1. So to see him end in 13th was, disappointing, especially for Team McLaren, who was looking to capitalize on this Lando Norris win. As for Carlos Sainz, he was given, I want to say, a 5-second penalty, for kind of starting the incident, and that put him from 4th place to 5th place, gave Sergio Perez a couple of handful of extra points that could be added to Team Red Bull, but honestly, that was all that was done to Carlos Sainz, because it wasn't really intentional, but it did happen, right? So that was about it for Oscar Piastri and Sainz. Then we get to, like I said, Lando Norris, who, oh my gosh, the fact that Lando Norris has a win now, everybody in the F1 world, all the other racers, all the other teams, they were excited to see Lando Norris get his win. Verstappen, Hamilton, Charles, Carlos, you name them, Fernando Alonso, they were all saying their praises to Lando Norris once he won the race. there was no real bad blood between Lando Norris and anybody else, because he went out and he didn't play dirty, right? He didn't, cause an incident or whatever. This was all clean racing by Lando Norris. And with this result, it also marks the second time this season that Max Verstappen didn't win a race. Of course, the first time was back in Australia, where his car absolutely fell apart on him, and, the Ferrari team were able to take advantage of what happened there. So, Carlos Sainz came out with the win in Australia, and, the rest of the group followed, right? And now that Lando Norris has this win in a race that Max Verstappen didn't DQ in, that's 2 out of the first 6 races we've seen where Verstappen hasn't finished in first place. Of course, every race that he's won has been absolutely, complete dominance, right? The Max Verstappen we've seen for the last 2 years. But all I'm saying here is that if, McLaren is able to perform at this level for the rest of the season, we could actually be getting a competitive F1 season in what's felt like the first time in forever. I mean, right now, McLaren is obviously like the 3rd best team in F1, because you've also got Ferrari and Red Bull in front of them. But if Ferrari and McLaren are able to keep poking away at these Red Bull wins, towards the end of the season, I'm talking December time, we could actually have a quite interesting conversation of who's going to win the Constructors' Cup, or hell, who is going to, lead all of F1 in points. Of course, Verstappen has a huge lead, but there is still so much racing left to be done here. And now, while this video might have felt like a Lando Norris video, it's supposed to be about everything that happened in Miami, and something that I think hadn't gotten the media attention it deserved because of Lando Norris's performance is Yuki Tsunoda. Yuki Tsunoda, oh my goodness. It sucks that he's on like Red Bull's second team. He is a really good racer, and he's been showing it all season. I mean, he finished 7th place behind only the biggest of names, the best of cars. He finished behind both Ferraris, both, I want to say, Red Bulls, 1 McLaren, and Lewis Hamilton. And then you have Yuki Tsunoda right there as 7th, and honestly, he didn't really get talked about, but he should definitely get praised for his performance in Miami. Yuki Tsunoda, it does have a bright future in F1 racing, and I can't wait to see where he goes, especially with a lot of the seats, potentially being changed in 2025. Maybe Yuki Tsunoda moves on and, has a better car in the near future. Who knows? This is just me chatting for real, though. Now, another racer who exceeded expectations in Miami was Sir Lewis Hamilton, who had his best race of the season. He finished in 6th place in Miami. Honestly, he needed this after that disaster he put on in China. Sure, he ended up in 9th, but like the qualifying, all of the build-up, even most of the race, he didn't look great in China at all, and he had struggled, in Japan and in Australia and in Saudi, for the whole season. It's just been an absolute mess. So Lewis Hamilton really needed this, and I know most Lewis Hamilton fans, maybe even Lewis Hamilton himself, are looking to the future, 2025 to be specific, because he is making that move to Ferrari, and I can't wait to see what he looks like on my team, right? But as of right now, I think that Miami performance was very much needed for Lewis Hamilton. Anyway, that's about it for the Miami Grand Prix 2024. I think I've talked about it enough, right? I have covered a few other races. Right here, I talked about Oliver Behrman really breaking out, and then, Carlos Sainz's win right there in Australia, I'm pretty sure. So go check those videos out if you haven't. But like I said, thank y'all for watching, staying this long. Appreciate it. Much love. Deuces.